client is using the house designs you made to build 15 structures. Who has the copyright to the drawings? So this is one of those questions where you have to really think about what is the actual question. And the first sentence, while telling, is actually a bit of a red herring. So let's just sort of run through the possible answers. A, you, the architect, does. B, depends on what is written in the contract. C, client always has copyright. How else could they ever build anything? D, this would likely be something that would be mediated. So in the typical contract, which, remember, the architect contract typical is the B101. There's a bunch of other ones, there's B104, 107, a bunch of others, but the sort of typical one is the B101, and that's going to be the owner-architect agreement. In that B101, the typical, the way it's written into the sort of base document is that the architect always has copyright, but the client always has the right to use the work, all of the instruments of service, which we'll get to in a minute, but the client always has the right to use the work for this project in this location. So the typical contract, the architect holds copyright. But there are many times, I would hazard a guess at, I don't know, 20% of the time or 30% of the time, something, that's not true, that it's very simply done. There's a very simple place in the contract to say that that's not the case, that the owner will take copyright. And that makes a lot of sense in certain situations. So in this particular example, the client is using house designs you made to build 15 structures. Well, if your contract is to do a prototype house, then that prototype can be, you would then in that contract make sure that the client had the copyright to the drawings and that they would then be able to, just like you knew they would, go ahead and build 15 more houses. There's lots of other situations where clients often want the copyright. One example would be maybe you're doing a Taco Bell or something like that, and they have a franchise branding information that they don't want anybody else to own. So you're working for them. Those contracts will absolutely expect you to hand over copyright to the client in those situations. I can't really imagine what you would do with a Taco Bell design, but I'm sure there's something. But there are lots of examples like that. Actually, many governments, when you sign contracts with government developments, the governments almost always will demand copyright, which is kind of goofy because it's kind of unlikely they're going to do the same building again or something like that. But whatever, it seems to be built into government contracts. So there's plenty of places where even though it's built in that the architect has copyright, there are plenty of times when that little bit gets crossed out and the copyright is handed over to the owner in the contract. So the answer is, well, it depends on what's going on in the contract. Because it isn't necessarily, A is not necessarily true. It's certainly the background true, but it's not something you could say with 100% surety. C, the client always has copyright. First of all, anytime you see the word always, be nervous, because the client doesn't always have copyright. They always have the right of use, which is different from copyright. They have the right of use for that project at that location. And then if you hand over copyright in the contract, they have it. And then this would likely be mediated. Maybe that's true, but mediation would only really work if the contract was still moving forward. So that one's not really part of the game either. So I know it sounds kind of wishy-washy to say, but depends on what is written in the contract. That is absolutely the kind of thing that NCARB is trying to get you to realize, is that the contracts have certain things that are part of the base, but then you have to, there are systems for altering it, and then once you've altered it, that's now what you follow. So it's always about looking back at the contracts.
For those of you who are ready to start preparing for the ARE right now, and if you're already an AIA member, you can use coupon code 418-17-PJM-YT to get a 15% discount for the entire duration of your ARE exam prep membership. Finally, please leave a comment below the video to let us know what you think and share any suggestions you may have. I promise we'll read every word that you write and use them to tune our next episodes. So thanks for watching.